Hello, my name is Michael DeNoyer. It is 18 December 2020, and today I'll be discussing the roles of both the pancreas and the liver in digestion. I chose this topic because it was one I wasn't really familiar with, and I wanted the opportunity to kind of dive into it a little bit deeper. So let's go ahead and do so here. Okay, so the pancreas and the liver are accessory organs that aid in digestion, but are not actually part of the digestive tract. The pancreas sits below and behind the stomach. You can see the silhouette of it in this visual aid here. The head of the pancreas nestles into the loop of the duodenum. This location makes it convenient for pancreatic secretions to enter the small intestines. The liver is actually the largest internal organ and lies just under the diaphragm and on the right side of the body. Although a significant portion of the mechanical digestion takes place in the mouth and stomach, chemical digestion really occurs when chyme enters the small intestines. At that point, the digestive enzymes from the stomach are inactivated by a change in the pH in the pancreatic and liver enzymes, along with enzymes from the brush border of the duodenum take over. These enzymes finish digestion of peptides, carbs, and fats into smaller, more resorbable molecules. While both the liver and the pancreas play important roles in digestion of our food, each has an important role outside the complement of the digestive functions. The liver has a multitude of functions aside from assisting in nutrients breakdown. It also is responsible for building larger macromolecules. The liver plays a major role in the storage of nutrients for later use, including the simple forms of carbs, fats, and vitamins. The liver is responsible for the production of bile, which is an essential for breaking down fats and plays a major role for detoxifying our bodies. The pancreas, on the other hand, is interesting and important organ in its own right, with both endocrine and exocrine functions. To differentiate, the endocrine gland secretes their product, in this case hormones, directly into the blood. The exocrine gland secretes their product, in this case enzymes, directly into the ducts that lead into the target tissues. The pancreas' primary exocrine function relates to the production of insulin and glucagon, which are critical hormones for glucose metabolism and homeostasis. The pancreas also plays a major role in the production and secretion of digestive enzymes. So let's take a closer look at each one. All right, so starting with the liver, interestingly enough, the liver is the only internal organ that can regenerate itself. So when they have to do a organ transplant for somebody that has cirrhosis of the liver or liver failure, they can take a piece of a viable one and plant that into another patient, and that's enough to sustain that patient for the rest of their life, which I thought that was pretty incredible. So anyway, as I mentioned, the liver has an important function within the digestive system, but its two main jobs most directly relate to the system are the process of nutrients absorbed from the small intestines and to produce bile. The liver has a very large blood supply with two purposes: to deliver oxygen, but also to deliver nutrients. The hepatic artery coming from the heart delivers oxygenated blood to the liver so that it can function. The liver also receives deoxygenated but nutrients-rich blood from the spleen, stomach, and intestines via the portal vein. Only about 25% of the liver's blood supply is oxygenated blood from the hepatic artery. The remaining 75% of the liver's blood flow is from the portal vein, carrying nutrients, bilirubin, and toxins for processing. Once it has processed the oxygen and nutrients, blood flows out of the liver via the hepatic vein to the peripheral tissues and eventually back into the heart. The next logical question is, well, what goes on inside the liver, right? So that's where we talk about hepatocytes. Hepatocytes are liver cells comprising approximately 80% of the mass of the liver and are the major workhorses that perform a large amount of the liver's function. Hepatocytes are hexagon-shaped cells with a central vein and a bundled triads at the corners of the cells containing branches to the hepatic artery, hepatic portal vein, and bile ducts. These workhorses process a large amount of the blood and metabolites such as glucose, plasma proteins, urea, and vitamins into the peripheral tissues of the body, as well as certain metabolites for excretion. Some of these processed carbs and fats are stored in the liver as glycogen, lipoproteins, or triglycerides for later use. These hepatocytes also send bile salts, bilirubin, water, ions, phospholipids into the duodenum via the hepatic duct. So the liver synthesizes bile, but it doesn't store it. It exits the liver via the common hepatic bile duct and flows through the cystic duct into the gallbladder for storage. Cholecystokinin is an enzyme that stimulates the gallbladder to contract the released stored bile. The enzyme is secreted by cells of the duodenum with hydrochloric acid, amino acids, or other fatty acids to move into the stomach or small intestines. The bile flows out through the cystic duct, through the common bile duct, and into the duodenum via the sphincter of Oddi. The sphincter of Oddi controls the release of the bile and pancreatic secretions into the duodenum. So bile is needed to break down fat from our food into fatty acids. It's composed of two things: bile pigments, which provide color, which really aren't important for the function, and bile salts. Bile salts help emulsify fat. They help us break down fat into micelles, which are disc-shaped conglomerations of mono and diglycerides, bile salts, cholesterol, and fatty acids. These micelles then move into the small intestines, where they are eventually broken down and absorbed. Because fat molecules are not water-soluble, they travel from the stomach into the digestive tract in large globules. Lipase is a pancreatic enzyme that is only able to break down surface layer of these fatty molecules. Because of that, bile salts are necessary to break down the larger globules into smaller fat particles so that lipase has more surface area to work on. Lipase is primarily produced by the pancreas, but is also produced in smaller amounts by the mouth and the stomach. The emulsified fat, along with bile salts, travel down the small intestines where they are absorbed. Bile salts, after being absorbed in the small intestines, circulate back into the liver where the whole process starts all over again. All right, changing gears here, let's go ahead and talk about the pancreas. As I previously mentioned, the pancreas has an important role in both chemical digestion, but also in the regulation of sugar after digestion. The pancreas is uncapsulated, which means it's basically a slurry of cells that clump together in the retroperitoneum. The exocrine function of the pancreas is to secrete digestive enzymes and sodium bicarbonate directly into the duodenum of the small intestines via the sphincter of Oddi. Sodium bicarbonate is secreted into the ducts of the pancreatic Hincer cells. Its function is to neutralize gastric hydrochloric acid and chyme. Secretion of this watery sodium bicarbonate solution is a result of passive process between extracellular fluid and the pancreatic lumen, involving the transfer of sodium bicarbonate ions. The duodenum also secretes a small amount of sodium bicarbonate, but most is produced in the pancreas. In addition to the sodium bicarbonate, the liver produces three primary digestive enzymes that have a crucial role in the breakdown of nutrients. So the first is amylase, and it's responsible for the breakdown of starch into small carbs, maltose, disaccharides, etc. And while lipase breaks down lipids, triglycerides into fatty acids, monoglycerides, diglycerides, and glycerol. Amylase and lipase meet another additional enzyme at the brush border of the small intestines to continue this breakdown. Polytechnic enzymes, aka protease, is responsible for the breakdown of the long chain molecules of proteins into the shorter fragments or peptides. These eventually break down into component amino acids. Protease enzymes coming from the pancreas are zymogens, meaning that they are inactive enzymes because they contain an extra peptide bond that is needed to break down before they can function. Trisiptogen and chymotrisiptogen are primary zymogens coming from the pancreas, both of which are activated in the duodenum. Trisiptogen is activated by trypsin by contact with the entropeptidase at the brush border. Trisiptin activates chymotrypsin from the chymotrypsin. Trypsin also activates the pancreatic zymogens into functioning protease enzymes. The trypsin and chymotrypsin further go down to break down proteins. All right, so let's go into the endocrine functions of the pancreas. The pancreas is organized into isle cells called isles of Langerhans. There are 4 types of cells, 3 of which we'll be focusing on today. The first type is a beta cell. Beta cells produce insulin and are the most abundant of the cells. They elevate blood glucose levels to stimulate the release of insulin. Insulin facilitates the uptake of glucose by the cells and also stimulates the liver to convert excess glucose into glycogen for storage. The next type is the alpha cell. These cells produce glucagon, which converts stored glycogen into the liver back into glucose for release into the bloodstream. Glucagon also stimulates lipolysis, which takes the triglycerides that are stored in the liver and breaks them down into free fatty acids and glycerol, some of which get converted into glucose in the bloodstream. The third most common type of cell is the delta cell. These cells release a hormone called somatosins, which the main job of this enzyme is to inhibit the release of glucagon and insulin. These 3 work together to maintain glucose and homeostasis in the body. Dysfunction of them could allude to insulin production and secretions in excess of glucose and could lead to diabetes. All right, so that wraps up the discussion of the roles in the liver, the pancreas, and digestion. To recap the topics, I put together a little crossword puzzle, so feel free to go ahead and pause the video here and work on it if you wish. The answers are on the next slide, so I'll go ahead and click that here. All right, so this is the final slide and concludes my presentation. So I hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know if you have any questions.